Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to look at a fantasy book, part of the first book in a series called The Ranger's Apprentice by John Flanagan. This is the ruins of Gorlan, I believe is how it's pronounced. With all these fantasy words, sometimes, yes, it's Glorian, the ruins of Glorian. So I found this series a long time ago, back when I was working library paging, as in I was putting books away. And I've reread them recently, and you know what, decided to review them on my channel because they're interesting. Age range middle school and higher would be definitely the target audience of this book. The main character, Will, is 15 at the start of these books. So it's definitely geared toward those. This is definitely epic fantasy. Looking for the categorization of these books. Geared toward the older kids. It's medieval epic fantasy. It takes place in a fictional world modeled after England, and the not the United Kingdom. This is, because it's not united, this is early medieval. So castles, knights, warriors, things like that. Not a lot of mythical monsters here. There's a little bit in this book, but then it definitely veers away from this kind of thing. So in this book, this is the first book, you meet our main character, who is Will. He's a foundling at the castle of the, he's the Duke Arnold. It's been a while since I just reread this, so I'm pulling up from his world here. And no, it's not giving me my world here. Let's see. Okay, so yes, the country is Alun, and Will's basically, he's a foundling. Him and a girl by the name of Alice, I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly, were abandoned as babies. So he was abandoned kind of at the doorstep, and was essentially told his father was a warrior. His mother died in childbirth, and he was taken in. And then this young girl was, I can't remember exactly, her family was already part of this castle's community. And then they were joined by another young boy by the name of Horace, a boy named George, and then Jenny. These were the main characters they were the same age. So they all come of age at the same time. And these are the characters that he was close with. And so they all come of age at the same time. And at this point, at 15, they have to choose their vocation. And Will, believing that his father was a great warrior and died in battle, wanted to go to the battle school. But he's small, and so he's not exactly set for battle school. So Horace, who is larger, he's a little bit of a bully, not really, but he's the bigger guy of the boys, and he does go off to battle school. You can hear a little bit more about him. He does become a major character. George goes off to the scholars. You don't see much of him until later books. In fact, he plays at least some sort of place in the final book. And then Alice becomes a diplomat. She has a bigger role later on, particularly when it comes to Will. And then Jenny goes with, is apprenticed to the cook. And so you have Will, who doesn't quite know what he wants to do, but the ranger of the fief, Holt, who, yes, a major character here, we get to know Holt quite well, slips a letter to the Duke, and essentially, he's also a knight. So, and Will, he doesn't know quite what it says, so Will decides to sneak up and see what the letter says. Well, this is exactly what Holt suspected him to do. He's watching him. He watches how he sticks to the shadows and climbs up a wall. And basically, they kind of catch him. It's like, yep, this is exactly what I expected you to do. And he offers Will a place in the Ranger Corps. So what the Rangers are, they're a combination of king's spy and they're the king's eyes in his individual dukedoms. And so they keep an eye on things and see what's going on in those specific areas, help out when needed, and keep an eye, make sure the battle schools are up to par, and report back to the king. So they typically report directly to their commander, who is Crowley, and then Crowley reports to the king. So the Rangers are essentially the king's eyes on the ground, so to speak. They are also spies and scouts during times of war, and they're trained fantastic archers. These guys are trained also in the art of being unseen. And so some people, particularly the villagers, are afraid of the Rangers because they can kind of appear out of nowhere. And Holt specifically is legendary. And a lot of people think he's like 10 foot tall. He's not. He's short. He's very short, as is Will. They're small. They're not hobbit small, but they are not tall, giant men because they're supposed to be quick, as is evidenced by what Will does. He hides in the shadows and then climbs a wall. They're fast. They're agile. They're fantastic archers. And then they work with a two-handed knife when they have to do in close combat. So, but they're mainly, they hide and they ambush. That's their primary role when battling. And of course, they're the scouts. And yes, Holt is very, very good. So first part of this book, you see Will's training. He, at first, Holt kind of treats him like a slave. It's like you get to clean, you learn to cook, and you learn to tend your own stuff because that's what the Rangers do. They don't have servants and things like that, so they learn to take care of themselves and be self-sufficient. They're apart from the castles because they have to be. That's their job. Their job is to not intermingle, but to keep an eye on things. So that's what Will starts learning to do. They also have a specific type of horse, these ponies, that are very intelligent and are trained with certain commands to do specific things and to be able to help their riders. So Will ends up with a pony by the name of Tug. And yes, Tug is a major character. And Holt has a horse of his own. So what happens here, and now you also get a little bit of what's going on with Horace. Now Horace goes to the battle school, and he ends up interacting with 3 very vicious bullies who torment him and abuse him and make him their slave without Horace really realizing they're not supposed to be doing this. This is not part of the battle school. It's not. These guys are bullies, and they're nasty, and they're cruel, and they are older than him, and they can't stand him, I think because they're jealous of him. He's even despite the fact that they're tormenting him and abusing him, he is still very, very good, and the head of the battle school, Sir Rodney, sees this. So what ends up happening is Holt and Will are out one day and working on Will's tracking and learning animal tracks. And they run into a farmer who alerts them of a boar. And so they have a boar hunt. They get Sir Arnold, they get Rodney, they get some of the battle school recruits, including Horace, and they go after this boar, and Will ends up saving Horace's life. And Horace basically says, I'll pay it forward. I will pay you back for this. If you ever need me, I will help you. So word gets back to these bullies that Horace, in their mind, embarrassed the battle school by being rescued by this ranger apprentice. So they abuse him first, and then they go after Will, who's practicing archery near basically Holt's cabin where he's supposed to be. He's doing and they try to basically attack him. Horace gets away from what they had abused him. He's already injured and tries to protect Will. Then Holt shows up. Yeah, well, he kind of watched these things, and it's like, Yep. It's time to get payback. So he essentially, first, they try to bad talk and try to attack Holt, which is, of course, a bad idea. I mean, this is a seasoned ranger. He may be short, he may look older, but he's still got his stuff. And I think he injures the leader of the group, and then he forces the other two to go up against Horace. And essentially, Horace one-on-one, and Horace beats the crap out of him, which Holt knew he would do. And then, of course, he forces the other one. Yeah, you have to get beaten the crap out of as well. So, mind you, Horace is still injured. So these guys are beating the crap out of him. Horace ends up in the infirmary. Will ends up injured, but he gets better. But Holt alerts the Sir Rodney of what was going on and what he saw. So these three bullies, who were, I think, second or third year in battle school, are basically told, pack your stuff, you have 24 hours to get off our land. And they're essentially banished. Like, go the heck away. And basically leave Horace to actually go through battle school. Meanwhile, Will and Holt go off onto the yearly gathering of the Rangers, where they meet, why on earth can I not remember the character's name here, which is Holt's his former apprentice, Gillian. There we go. Got that. And one of the things they try to do on their way to Gillian, and most young former apprentices try to do, is they try to sneak up on their former masters, which technically Gillian does. But, of course, he forgets that Holt has Will with him this year. So, basically, Will kind of surprises him. Now, Gillian, actually one of the rare Rangers, actually knows sword fighting. He trained with a battle master because his father was the head of a battle school. But he wanted to be a ranger because it was different. He'd been training with a sword since he was like 11 years old. So he continued his training when he was with Holt. And that's not normal for a ranger. But he's also a master of moving unseen. And that's what he does. So those three get the gathering. Something's up. And eventually Holt goes to talk to the command why Gillian and Will kind of get to know each other and see like what the heck is going on. So they don't start pitching their tents yet. Holt shows up, basically says, so there's these creatures that were half man, kind of half beast things that were from the last war, and we think they've killed at least 2 former commanders who had been in this battle after revenge, and we need to go after them. So Holt, Gillian, and Will go after these creatures that are essentially assassins, but they're not very smart. They have to get a sense of smell. So they get to these plains, which essentially was the former land of the guy that they beat back, Morgrath. I think he betrayed the king, and he had owned this. He'd been a duke, I believe. And that's who the last battle was waged against, where Will's father dies. So they're on these weird plains, which is very, very flat, and they sound very funny. And then they go after these 2 creatures that it's hard to kill them because they have really thick matted hair, so arrows don't really penetrate. And they decide that Gillian is going to give Will his horse, and Will and his horse, those with the 2 horses, are going to go close to Castle Redmount, which is where Holt and Will are stationed, and get Arnold and of course the name of Rodney to help get rid of these things. And Gillian's going to be on foot, and Holt is going to hunt these things. So Will does this. He goes constantly. He switches horses. He doesn't stop. Really. He gets to the castle. He alerts both knights like, he needs your help. And he rests briefly and he goes with them. And he at this point thinks that the next target of these creatures is actually Holt, which he is correct. So they get there. Holt has been injured. He's, I think, possibly killed one of them. And the other one's about to kill him. And then he basically damages, the creature hurts Arnold and it's one of those things where it looks into your eyes and you're so terrified you freeze. And that's what happened to Rodney. So Will, in the background, there was somebody that started a fire. Which these creatures are terrified of, because again, very mad at hair. So he gets a flaming arrow and shoots into the thing twice. And they're archers. They're very, very good. And he hits it twice and kills the thing. And he's able to help and rescue his master, the person he was Apprentice, his mentor, and then both the two knights. And essentially he's offered, at the end of this, because he does great things, he's offered a space in the battle school, which he actually refuses. It's like he thought, and that's when Holt tells him, it's like, because he's like, my father was a great hero and a great soldier, or he was a knight. And Holt's like, your father wasn't a knight. He was a sergeant. He had been a farmer, and he was the bravest man I ever knew. And essentially tells him the story of how Will's father saved his life. Holt was in the middle of a battle, and the guy came in and basically rescued him and died saving him, made him promise, like, my wife and my child are back home, please rescue them. And he goes and finds Will. Basically, his mother dies. I will get to that story later. That actually, the final book in this series is actually a series of short stories, which I'm reading now, which gives the actual background to what actually happened in that hut that day. But essentially, Will's mother dies, and Holt takes Will to be a warden at Arnold's castle, because that's what he promised Will's father. So, who was just a common sergeant in the military. He had been a farmer. He was called to war. So he was a great hero, but he wasn't part of the battle school or anything. So, and that's the end of this book. It's a very good introduction. You get an introduction to this world, specifically to these Rangers, and to Will as a character, as well as Horace, who becomes more important as books go on. You also get a little bit of a good look at both Holt and Gillian, who, again, these are become major characters in this book series as it goes on. And there are, I think, 10 books total. That includes the book of kind of short stories and kind of background, which I'm actually in the middle of reading now. So that's it for this review. Again, this book series is definitely geared middle school and up. You could probably read it to younger kids. It's a little dark. They're definitely very long. I don't have physical copies. I have ebook copies. I own the first 4, and then I borrowed the rest. It's certainly something I would want to buy and add physically to my collection, but right now I don't have it. So, but it's definitely decent. These are definitely decently long books. They're probably close to 300 or 400 pages. So, definitely not for the younger kids. I don't know if you would want to read them. They meander a little bit. They're definitely adventure stories. There is no sex in any of these books. There is, obviously, Will grows up, and there are some romances in later books, including with Horace. Not Will and Horace. Again, this is based off medieval England. Yeah, pretty much, yeah, big medieval England. So, yeah, there's a little bit of that, but there's killing, and there's it's definitely, everything is battle based, and there's a lot of suspense. The second book is a cliffhanger, and I think so is book 5 are cliffhangers as well. So, which is not always my favorite. I'm not a big fan of cliffhangers, so I normally try to make sure these books exist before. And all of the books have been published. He is working on he has a little bit of precursor series, which looks at Halt, and then he's writing some older ones, so he's still writing. So that's it for The Ruins of Gorlan, the second book, which I will cover in my next video here, as I will, there we go, not the Royal Apprentice, the Ranger's Apprentice. So he has the Royal Apprentice, and then he has the Brother Brand Chronicles. So the next book here, if I can find, is, I believe, The Burning Bridge. Burning Bridge's second book. So that's it for this review. Check out the rest of this series. It is very, very good. Definitely geared epic fantasy, medieval fantasy, battle tactics, weapons. I would say both boys and girls, so you don't really find female warriors. There are 2 strong female characters in this book. Alice, who I already mentioned, and then a young lady who goes, depending on where she's at and what she's doing, she goes either by the name of Evelyn or Cassandra. Mostly it's Evelyn, and I will get to her in the next book. So that is it. If you like what you see, check out the rest of this series. I have a bunch of other book reviews, some older kids, some little kids, bunches of film reviews, and a whole bunch of more stuff. So be sure to check out this channel. I have a lot to offer. Thank you.